Welcome back to another edition of the RPO College Football Podcast. I'm your humble host, Jerome Jones. You already know who he is, my guy, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ray Roberts. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Jerome. How are you?
I am good, man. We're getting so close. I can just feel it. I can just feel the closeness. We're getting so close to college football. Go ahead, Ray.
Do you know that Notre Dame starts on August 26th?
Yes.
Whew.
Yes.
Man.
I know that. I
That's close,
just seen that date, actually. I think it was just like yesterday.
Can't take goosebumps, man. Okay?
A few more weeks. We can hold out. So I hope you guys just as excited as we are, man. We're going to talk about some good football stuff. Before we get on, we'd like to always say that we are a podcast. So the comment section, you can put comments on here. Let us know what you think about teams that we're talking about or a question about another team. Definitely let us know. And we'll definitely put your comment on here and answer them. So let's get right into it. Also, if you haven't seen our other podcasts on other teams, make sure you go check that out too. Just in case you missed some of these teams, that's fine. You can go back and go in there, and if you want to put a comment down there and let us know what you think about those teams as well, you can do that. But today we're gonna have a good slew of teams, and first team we're gonna talk about today, Mr. Ray, is the Pittsburgh Panthers. So Panthers had a fairly decent year last year at 4-9. Let's talk about some of the quarterback positions, because one of those quarterbacks is a guy that you're very familiar with, right? And Jerkovic. Ooh, I was well. Jerkovic. If you guys don't know, I'm bad with names, but Jerkovic, right there. He's new to the team. They got a couple of other guys that's on his team that some fairly decent names on it, as well as Christian Velox. Velo. I think that's how I say it. Valeo. I don't know. But anyway, Ray, what do you think about this team on their offensive side?
I think that Pittsburgh is usually a team that, like most teams from this part of the country, when they run the ball well, they play well. When they don't, they're not as good a team.
Mm-hmm.
I am a Phil Dracovic fan. I think he's a good football player. I mean, he transferred from Notre Dame to Boston College, now to Pitt. Mm-hmm. So he's just trying to find his way still. But he's a talented kid. He has size. He has arm talent. He's a good player. He's had some injury issues the last couple of years. So
yeah, I'm kind of curious what's going on with Pitt, because last few years they've been rotating quarterbacks in their last couple of years. So I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's Pitt's fault for that. I mean, it is the transfer portal, but it's kind of hard to sustain a college program and you're rotating quarterbacks almost every year. But they've been doing pretty well with it so far.
I mean, I think that they have some players on offense that are good players. Rodney Hammond, their running back, is a junior, and he was pretty productive last year. We'll see how well he does this year. I actually like Kenyatta Mumfield, the junior wide receiver. He's a good football player. To me, though, the best thing about them is they have like a fairly veteran offensive line.
Yeah.
Matt, I hate Goncalves. He's a right tackle. Blake Zumovic, Jake Cradle, their center. They're all veteran guys, all good players. I think that, again, like we keep saying, it's going to come down to is our defense going to be as good as their offense this year? So.
No, I agree. I think Gavin Betholomew. He's a fairly decent tight end for these guys. I think he's gonna have a solid year this year. So that will also play into that offensive attack that you're talking about, Ray. But like you said, they got the veteran offensive line, which is good for them, especially for a quarterback that's new and just coming in and needs to figure his things out. So I think that I'm fairly okay with their offense. I think offense is gonna be pretty good. But let's talk about their defense. How are they looking as a defense coming into this 2023 season? Right?
Well, they play like a 4-2-5 type of a defense, a lot of hybrid guys going in there.
Yeah.
David Green, their defensive tackle, was a good football player. Bengali Kamara. Kamara is a senior. He's a star, what they call a linebacker, defensive lineman, hybrid guy who plays a little bit all over the place up front. I like Marcus Williams, their corner, and NJ Devonshire, their other corner. They're both good football players. They're both veteran football players, seniors. So I think their defense will be better this year. They were not horrible last year. Of course, I like Pat Narducci, their coach. He does a good job. He's done a pretty good job at Pittsburgh since he went there. So I think that, we'll see. He's been there for 8 seasons now. His record's not great, but it's been getting better the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, I agree. A couple of years, like I said, they've been, doing their thing the last couple of years with their quarterbacks. They had, some receivers that transferred as well. The guy from that plays at Pittsburgh Steelers right now, Kenny Pickett. They had him a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He graduated, and then last year, who they had last year? What's the kid that keeps transferring everywhere? Oh man.
Oh my God!
I can't. It's blowing my mind that I can't remember it right now. Good.
I don't remember his name either.
Yeah, and now this year they having Phil in there, so he been the coach been doing a great job for what he been doing, and they play in the ACC too, and playing pretty well against those guys. They're not world beating teams, but they do have Pittsburgh. I mean, they do have Clemson in there. So, like I said, I think Pitt's going to be a solid team. Let's get to their schedule real quick. And again, like I said, they were 9-4 last year. So let's see how they're going to fare this year. So there will be both at home for the first 2 games against Warwood and Cincinnati. They'll be away for West Virginia, be home versus UNC. Away versus Virginia Tech, home versus Louisville, away for the next 2 games against Wake Forest and your Notre Dame, home for Florida State, away for Syracuse, home for Boston College, and away for Duke. So looking at that schedule, Ray, how you thinking this team's gonna fare?
So Jerome, I think they'll be right around 8 or 9 wins again. I mean, West Virginia is not an easy game, but it's a game they can win. They beat them last year. It was a pretty close game, but they still beat them last year. And last year they played them at home. This year it's away. They kind of switch that up every other year. At Virginia Tech, again, athletic team, Virginia Tech, but we'll see how good they are. We don't really know that for sure. Mm-hmm. North Carolina is a tough game because North Carolina scores a lot of points.
Correct.
I don't know. They actually lost to North Carolina last year, so of course that is a tough game. Wake is a fairly physical defensive team. I think that's not going to be an easy win for them. But then they play at Notre Dame. I don't think they'll beat Notre Dame, but it depends on how. Well, again, depends on what their defense can do.
I'm a true Notre Dame fan.
I mean, I don't want it to seem like I'm being biased, but I don't want to. I mean, I don't think they're going to beat Notre Dame.
No, I agree with you, Ray. No, it's fine.
I mean, they play at Duke. They play Boston College, who's a physical team. They play versus Syracuse, which for some reason has an asterisk. I'm not sure. For some reason, they're playing that game in New York.
Yankee Stadium.
Okay, that makes sense, though. Again, that's probably going to be a good game, though.
Yeah.
Syracuse is another team who had an up-and-down season last year. They looked really good at times. And
they lost a lot of pieces, though.
They did lose a lot of players this offseason. They did. They did lose a lot of players. So
I'm giving them about what you said, Ray. I'm giving them 5 losses, though. I think a loss to Florida State, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is going to be better than a lot of people think. I'm giving them a loss to UNC, and I give them a loss to Cincinnati. The only one that it might be the closest might actually be that Wake Forest game, but I'm giving them 5 losses, which put them at 8-5. Right? It could be a little bit better than that. I don't think it's going to be much better than that. It could be worse. There could be a couple of teams like sneak up on it, like you said, right? West Virginia could be a team. Virginia Tech could be a team. Syracuse can possibly be a team. So they got to be careful not to get too deep in the hole. I don't think they'll lose to those games, but I think those games are the sneaky games. I'm giving them 5 losses, 8-5.
I mean, I could go there too, Jerome. I could see that. I'm trying. They didn't play Cincinnati last year, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But they did play.
Like I've been down on Cincinnati since that year they lost all those pieces, which I think was like 2 years ago. I think they're gonna be a little bit better than they were.
I agree. They did beat Syracuse last year.
Yeah.
But that game again was at home. It wasn't in New York. So the North Carolina game is a big game for them because they lost to North Carolina last year. And we all know that North Carolina scores points. So,
No, you're right.
That's the one game, like, again, if I'm Pitt, I want to run the ball. I want to get Rodney Hampton, Sebo Mr. the ball as much as I can. But they're the kind of games that if you can balance out your offense, North Carolina is probably going to score more points than you can. So,
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I like that assessment. All right, let's get to our next team. It's going to be Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, Kentucky is going to the season without their latest quarterback being Will Levis. So they're going into this without Will Levis. Even with Will Levis last year, they were 7-6. So now their head honcho is going to be Devin Leary, former quarterback from North Carolina, I believe it is, right?
Yep.
North Carolina, yeah.
Yep.
So he's actually from Sicklerville, right? Sicklerville, New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah, I just learned that myself just now.
Good for him.
That's awesome. So overall on offense for the Kentucky Wildcats, how do you think they're gonna fare, Ray?
Again, we will see how the quarterback situation transpires. But again, a veteran offensive line, good player, Jordan Dingle, tight end, Tavion Robinson, their wide receivers, Kane Key, another good wide receiver, Kenneth Harvey, Jared Burton, Eli Cox, Jeremy Flox, all veteran offensive linemen. I think Kentucky's going to be good. I think they may be better than they were last year, to be honest with you. I mean, of course, the quarterback situation probably won't be as good because as much as I'm not a big fan of their quarterback, he was a talented kid. He had
Levis, yeah.
I mean,
he was fighting for his life a lot of those games.
He was. I mean, that's the thing that surprised me. If you look at their veteran offensive line, for me, they're a little undersized. Maybe that's a lot of their problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. They got a couple of smaller guys in there, but as bad as their offensive line was last year, we'll see how it is. They might be a little bit better this year. A little bit more experience.
Honestly, Jerome, sometimes I'm like, man, Will Levis was a talented player.
Yeah.
But was he a talented player that thought he could always get away from the rush?
And that's what I mean.
Remember the ball a little bit quicker?
Right. You took that right out of my mouth, right? Because I was just saying, like, sometimes when you have a quarterback that thinks he needs to do everything and be a Superman, it actually hinders the offense sometimes. And think about what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Right? Carson Wentz. Very talented player, had a successful year, and then tried to play too much hero ball at sometimes. And then it was actually hurting the team, and a team that wasn't that good, it kind of hurt the team because now he's trying to weather the storm by himself instead of relying on his guys. And then all you have to do is just tee off on Carson Wentz and you're going to probably win the game. You get what I'm saying? So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that with Will Levis where he was trying to play a lot of hero ball. So let's see how this offense goes with a guy, and Devin Leary, I think is going to be a little bit more systematic and, play by, what the coaches want them to do. and see, maybe they might be a little better than we thinking, right?
No, I think they're going to be, every bit as good as last year's record, if not a little bit better. I do.
Mhm.
I do. I mean, a lot of it's going to come down to, again, their defense, but their defense was not horrible last year.
Yeah,
It was the struggles of the offense that really hindered the team, to be
Mhm.
honest with
I agree.
you.
I
Again,
agree.
I'm not trying to say Will Levis was the problem. I'm not, because, again, he was a talented player for them. I
Mhm.
think, again, sometimes you're just better off playing the system
Yep.
and allowing guys to make plays.
Mhm.
I think Wentz – I also think, with not to get too much into Wentz's biggest problem was that when they had that one huge year was he got rid of the ball quicker because guys were
Yeah.
just open quicker.
Yeah.
And then after the guys weren't getting open quite as quicker. Same
Mhm.
thing with Will Levis. 2 years ago, he looked like he was going to be really good. And last year he was good, talented, athletic, but didn't have a great year because he always looked like he wanted to do something that wasn't there.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it was a lot of boneheaded plays more than not being good or not talented, And I think that's another reason why he fell to the second round. But at the same time, like you can still see there's something there too. And if you can kind of push that out of him,
right? I mean, you're never going to find an offensive coach that doesn't think he can fix the quarterback because that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
But if you watched their game film from last year, Will Levis held the ball a lot.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you would see where – here's the thing, though, man. I hate criticizing quarterbacks for this because then when a guy checks the ball down too much, they get that rap as being a check down guy.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Bradford.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Even the guy from Minnesota, Cousins, he gets the rap of being a check down guy. But for one, when you're checking down to Dalvin Cook, it's not a bad move.
Oh no, yeah.
I mean, Kirk Cousins does the same thing. If you don't see something open right away, you just check it down. But dude, that's not always a bad play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that's another reason why I feel like Kentucky can be a little bit more organized offense. I'm not saying that they're not going to be, they're going to be so much better without Will Levis or vice versa, but I think it's going to be a little bit more controlled. So
I think this is a big year for Mark Stoops, though.
Yeah,
he has an okay record. It's nothing special. He's been here 10 years now, though, and he's slightly over 500. I think that he needs to show the people in the SEC that he's going to be a next level type of a coach. I mean, Kentucky's not a great team, but they're a fairly talented team, and you don't want to regress. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go and you have to win 9-10 games, but I think if you come back and you go 6-7, 7-6, some people may start to think, well, maybe this guy's not the guy, So
definitely. All right, let's get on to the defense. What do we think about their defense, right?
If you look at their how they're rated, they were not rated that badly, but sometimes yardage doesn't always transpire into like not giving up a lot of points, which they gave up way too many points to a lot of teams. But I mean, if you look at their record, though, the teams that gave up the most points, I mean, the crazy thing is they only lost to Georgia by 10.
Yeah.
That was just like, I remember that game. I'm thinking, where's Kentucky? If Kentucky played against every team like that, ran the ball, played stingy defense, Will Levis is just doing the right thing, just get rid of the ball.
Yeah.
But then they regress and go back to playing hero ball and turning the ball over, and so.
Yeah, I actually remember seeing. I don't think I've seen that game, but I think I remember seeing the score, and I was like, "What happened?" What happened? But that's the SEC man.
Trayvon Babbage is our defensive end. He's a good football player. Deion Walker is a sophomore defensive tackle. J.J. Weaver, a linebacker, is a good player. De'Aaron Jackson is our middle linebacker, who I really like a lot. but he is a guy who over pursues a little bit. And you know how I feel about good linebackers that over pursue, man. You know. In their secondary, they don't have anybody special. Jordan Lovett, their free safety, is a good, solid football player, but does miss tackles at times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they're going to be better than last year. But when I say better, they were 7-6. Excuse me, last year.
Yeah.
I actually just look at their schedule for the first time.
Yeah. So let's talk about the schedule.
Yeah.
So first 3 games they'll be home actually, which is fares well for them. But they got some meh kind of games right there. So it's gonna be Ball State, East Kentucky, and Akron. Then it'd be away for Vanderbilt. They'll be home for Florida, away for Georgia, home for the next 2 games versus Mizzou and Tennessee. There will be at Mississippi State, home for Alabama, and away for the last 2 games versus South Carolina and Louisville. So looking at that, what we thinking, Ray?
You know what, Drum? They may have a hard time getting 7 wins with that schedule, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That thing is a gauntlet.
Like,
that's a gauntlet.
It is. I mean, like, you look at the first 3 games, obviously, are very winnable games.
Yes.
We'll say Eastern Kentucky, Akron. But at Vandy is not an easy game. It's not extremely hard either. They lost to Vanderbilt last year at home. So, again, it's probably not going to be something where – then they play at Georgia, play Florida at home. They play Missouri, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, Alabama. They're not winning any of them games, man.
Even South Carolina, man.
South Carolina, that Louisville game by then could be a tough game for them if they're beat up a little bit. Honestly, I just said that Mark Stoops needs to have a big year. He really needs to have a big year there, man. Because that
you better see some wins in there, because I'm seeing maybe 5, Ray.
I agree.
Maybe 5 wins.
It's funny. I just looked at their schedule for the first time, honestly, and it's like, I mean, I maybe looked at the other day. For some reason, I didn't see Alabama. Wow.
Yeah, they got Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. That's going to be the biggest games. The next tier games is Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi State. That's rough. They're going to have a rough year. I mean, they're going to use that momentum they get in the beginning of the year to really make some noise. Because
here's the thing about it: if they start out 3-0, which is very likely, and if they can beat Vandy, they'll be okay. Because they beat South Carolina last year. I know they lost to South Carolina last year. So that scares me now. Yeah. Oh, they beat Missouri last year though. They beat Missouri. They beat Louisville.
I mean, Missouri haven't been that good the last couple of years though.
No, I know. I understand, but that's what I mean though. It is a game where they're maybe a little better than Missouri or as good. So, and it's marginal though. I know it is. Missouri's another team where their play doesn't always match the talent of their team sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you know what, Jerome? I agree with you. I only see 5 or 6 wins there. I do.
I agree.
They play over their head. They have the best record.
Yeah.
It was just last year, 7-6 maybe.
They got a tough one, Ray.
It's a tough schedule.
Tough.
And from Vandy away, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. The next 7 games, they may win 1 or 2, maybe. Wow,
that's rough. That's a rough stretch to go through, man. And
it is.
You lose those like that's honestly. You said that. I forgot the coach's name again. He, that's the type of gauntlet and stretch of losses that could get you fired for sure.
It is. It's Mark Stoops, and he's been a decent coach.
Yes.
I don't see where that's going to work out for him. I don't. So.
Yeah.
I just don't. 10 seasons. His record is 66-59. Again, I think they need to win 7 games for him to maybe not have to worry about people questioning him. Because if you look at that schedule, man, if they win 7 games there, that's not a bad year for them.
That's a good year because that means they upset somebody at some point.
Correct.
Yes.
That means they beat South Carolina. They beat Mississippi State. They're not beating Georgia. They're not. I don't think they're going to beat Florida, even though that's a home game for them. Florida's a really athletic team this year.
No. I don't think they'll be in Florida. Yeah, Florida is they're the team in total is a good team. Now the quarterback position, we'll see how that goes. Did we talk about Florida already? No, we didn't. So we'll talk about Florida a little bit. But we did the first week actually. We talked about Florida, but yeah, I think Florida's gonna be a solid team. I don't think they're gonna be great, but I think they're gonna be solid. But I definitely still think they're better than Kentucky. So
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting.
It is.
All right, let's get to our next team, which is gonna be UCF. Now, UCF last couple of weeks been very joyful. If you're a USC fan, you must be very, very happy about the future of this team because they've been hitting on a lot of good talent as far as recruiting. So their recruiting picked up a lot this last couple of weeks, and it been looking real good. But we're not talking about the recruiting. We're talking about the guys that are in it right now. So let's talk about them, Ray. They're off. Let's talk about their offense led by Giant Ray's Plumlee. So what's your thought about him and the rest of the team, Ray?
I like Plumlee. He's a good, solid football player. I mean, I think that he'll lead their offense the right way. He's a good player. He's a senior. He's a veteran guy. He has a lot of experience. He has a decent amount of starts under his belt. I like Gus Malzahn, their head coach. He's only been there for 2 years, but he's had a pretty decent record. He's 18-9, so he's done a solid job. It's not like UCF is one of them teams that like everyone after they build some momentum, they'll have that 1 or 2 good years and then have to regroup again. I think they're in the middle of regrouping now. I think that they're looking at their if I glance over at their schedule, looks like it's not that difficult. I mean, I like Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson, their wide receivers, are both veteran football players. I see a not greatly experienced offensive line. I see Tyler Grable, their left tackle, is probably their best lineman. Mm-hmm. He's a senior, but after that, they don't have a whole lot of experience there, except the right guard, Pupple, Lakai Pupple. He's a good, solid football player, but he's nothing special. He's just a good football player. But I think, honestly, again, talking about their defense, I do like a lot of the players on their defense. Mm-hmm. I think that's where they'll probably win games this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. Offense is just okay offense. I'm not even going to say solid. I think they're okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, they got a couple of guys that are pretty good. Hopefully, not like overwhelmingly great player. I think he's good for the college game, at least for now, and we see what he can do for this team this year. But let's talk about a little bit of defense. Who stands out to you on their defense, right?
Josh Solisar, their left defensive end. Ricky Barber, their nose tackle, is a good football player. Their other defensive, Tremont Harris Barash, is a senior football player who's got some upside. After that, though, that's really Jason Johnson, their senior linebacker, and Corey Tom Thornton, their corner, is a good football player. But after that, I don't see a lot of – I see some guys that have played a decent amount of games but haven't really showed what they are yet. I mean, but we're talking about young guys, so there's room for them to get better. So,
Correct. Yeah, a couple of young guys. Again, I think this is a team that's going to be a little bit better in the future. We'll see how that goes with them. I think the two brothers Hendersons, I think they're going to be solid team, solid players later in the future as well. Fred Davis, they're another DB they got. I think he's pretty good. I think they're going to have a fairly good team this year. I'm not sure about the record 9-5, and we'll get into the schedule now. But a 9-5 team last year had a really good year last year, so that really helped them, especially with the recruiting this year. And their head coach, blanking on his name, but the head coach that is there right now, he's really doing a really good job as far as recruiting and get some good names in there. So like I said, there's a lot of good buzz going around with the team right now, but we'll see how it goes for this season, because those guys are not there yet. They're not going. They're coming into the 2024 season. So we'll see how the 23 season goes as far as to get there. So let's talk about the schedule real quick, right? They're going to be
Well, Jerome escaped us again. All right. Well, I'm going to continue with the schedule here. They start off with Kansas State, then they play at Boise State, Villanova, at Kansas State, Baylor, at Kansas, at Oklahoma, West Virginia, at Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, and then Houston. So that is not an easy schedule, but it's not an extremely hard schedule either. It's a middle of the pack type of a schedule. But I think if I had to put a win-loss total on it right now, hold on 1 second. Drone will be back in 1 minute, so I will wait for him. But I'm going to just say I think I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If they are as good as last year, I'd be a little bit surprised. I see more like a 7 or 8 win season now, where they won 9 games last year. I think their schedule is a little bit harder this year. I think that they'll. I think they're gonna have a hard time getting to 9 wins like they did last year. Excuse me, but I do like their Plumlee, their quarterback, and I do like Gus Malzahn, their head coach. So it's going to come down to if they can beat a Boise State at home, if they can beat a Kansas State at home. They're not going to beat Oklahoma, but if they could beat Cincinnati away all those games, and beat Houston at home, maybe get lucky with Oklahoma State, then maybe they have a shot.
Yeah, I'm sorry guys for that. But yeah, I agree with you, right? Obviously they got the Kent State game. Boise State's gonna be a tough game. Villanova, I think they should beat them. Kansas State, we talked about Kansas State. I think they're gonna be a sort of rebuilding type of state right now. Losing their best players, especially on defense. Baylor, it's gonna be a tough game for them. Kansas, I think they should beat Kansas. Oklahoma's an interesting game. I think Oklahoma might have a bounce back year. Honestly, I think they're gonna be a little bit better than they were last year. West Virginia, solid team. I think UNC should beat them. Cincinnati. Actually, I think Cincinnati. I feel like Cincinnati and UNC is like fairly close actually, as far as talent level. So that was interesting actually. They're gonna be at Cincinnati, so that's gonna be a toss up for me. But I mean, we think about them playing Cincinnati, right?
I mean, they beat Cincinnati last year, but it was a close game, and that was at home. So again, that's going to be a big game for them. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think at Boise, at Kansas State, at Cincinnati, at Texas Tech. If they want to have a good year, they need to beat 1 or 2 of those teams.
Correct.
If they could beat 2 of them teams and then win the game they should win, they could have another 7, 8, 9 win season.
Yeah. I mean, I say I don't know how this team's gonna be, but looking at their schedule, they might kind of it look like they might repeat about what they had last year. I mean, some of these games are close games though. They're close matchups where you're like, it can go either way with some of these teams. But if they stay up the way they should, and Plumlee plays very well, I think they can. I think they can get up to 9 wins again. I do. Now
Yeah,
looking at the
I have faith in their coach. I think Gus Malzahn is a good coach.
Mhm.
I mean, he's only been there for 2 years, and he's won 18-9, which is a solid year for a guy coaching UCF. I mean, he has a 94-47 career record in 11 seasons, so he's been a winning coach.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to come down to pulling out a couple of them games at Boise, at Kansas State. I mean, I'd like to say they could beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma, but I don't think they will.
Yeah.
At Cincinnati, at Texas Tech, if they can win 2 of those games, they could have another 9-win season. If not, it's probably more like 6 or 7 wins.
Yep. No, I agree with you, Ray. I agree. So we'll definitely see how they do this year. I think they're going to be definitely a good team later on in a couple of years, but we'll see. We'll definitely see.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our next team, and we're going to be talking about the Little Brothers, Michigan State. I knew Ray was going to like that. Michigan State coming into this year. I actually don't hate their some of their players. They got a couple of good players on their team. They were only 5-7 last year, though. Fairly young quarterback position. They got a couple of 2 juniors and 2 freshmen. So we'll see how that go for there. But Ray, overall on their offense, how you think they're going to be?
I like Jalen Berger, their wide receiver. I like Peyton Thorne, their quarterback. Not that they're special or nothing, but they're good, solid college players.
Yeah.
I would be more worried about their offensive line, especially they have juniors at tackle. Their Spencer Brown is actually a good football player, but he's still only a junior. Their right guard is a sophomore. Nick Samak is their center, who's actually not a bad football player, and JD Duplain is their left guard, and he's not a bad player. But again, Brandon Baldwin is a junior, young player still trying to find his feet. Keon Coleman, their wide receiver, is a good football player. Trey Mosley, they play a lot of 3 sets. Montour Foster Jr. is a wide receiver. This there are 3 wide receivers. Foster is a guy who has the least impact. He's not as good as the other 2, but he's a good possession type of a kid. Guy who gets open. I don't worry about their offense. I think they'll move the ball. It's will they finish drives? Will they score points? Because Peyton Thorne is a good college player, but he's not nothing exceptional. He's just a good, solid player. Correct. Yeah. So when they're when you're a good, solid quarterback and you have to depend on other guys to make plays, this as we get closer to 20 yards, that yards they get harder to take. So
Correct. No, I agree. Two players I want to kind of highlight on their offense. I think you already talked about Trey Mosley, their wide receiver, 6'2", 198 pounds. I think he's going to be their leading receiver. But a guy that I don't think anybody knows about or talks about is Malik Carr at tight end. I think he's a freak at 6'5", 255 pounds. Really big, solid guy. He's going to be a guy to be a scapegoat for some of these plays for some of these quarterbacks, whoever their quarterback will be. And I think that he's going to have a pretty good breakout year for them.
I like his size.
Yeah.
I like his ability to get open down near the goal line, which is going to be big for them this year. So.
Exactly. Yeah, he showed a little bit of that last year. So
he did. He's later in the season.
Correct. Yep. So I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to feature a little bit more in this season, and I'm super excited about it. All right, let's talk about their defense, right? What do you think about their defense?
It's fairly veteran type of a defense. Simeon Burrow is a defensive tackle who's not a bad player. Jacoby Wyndham, Cal Holiday are both linebackers that are good football players. Charles Brantley is their corner, who's not a bad player. Angelo Gross is a good kind of like a hybrid corner safety, does a little bit of both, plays in the middle of the field a little bit. That's really their best players on defense.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one who really stands out on this team, though. There's really not.
Yeah, I was about to say, Ray.
They're just like a Michigan State workman type team. I like Mel Tucker as a guy. I think that this is going to be a tough year for Michigan State, and I don't think that he'll. I don't know how much longer he's going to live.
Yeah, it's crazy because like last year or 2 years ago, you would like look at their recruiting and like all the hype around, like wow, like man, Michigan State's about to do something, and then they had a lot of transfers. A lot of guys that transferred out, a couple of guys that just graduated, and looking at this defense, it's not anything that's very exciting to me to be able to be like they're gonna be better than the record, which was 7 last year. It makes me wonder about this program, like where they're going. It was hot coming into it. Mel Tucker had everybody roaring and stuff like that, and then the recruiting just kind of fell off. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but yeah, there was a hot.
You want my opinion on what happened?
Yeah.
Young kids don't always like to be coached hard, and Mel Tucker is going to coach you hard, and they didn't like it.
That's true.
And this is the kind of program that's going to be hurt. I mean, the NIL money and the transfer portal was not going to hurt Michigan, Notre Dame, USC, Alabama. Don't get me wrong; they're going to lose some guys.
Correct.
It's not going to hurt them the way it's going to hurt Michigan State, Penn State eventually, Pittsburgh. They're the teams where guys are just going to be like, well, any team that doesn't win regularly, where a coach is a hard ass, they're going to lose players.
That's true. That's true. It's like why are we working so hard? It's like why are we working so hard but not getting no results?
Guys don't want to compete anymore.
Yeah,
you want to be handed jobs, man.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, the coaches are probably responsible for it.
Yeah,
they are. I'm not trying to paint a brush where they're not at least a little bit responsible. They are, but you're going again. I think Michigan State with a guy like Mel Tucker, who if you're a college football fan, you respect him. But if you're just a casual college football fan, you're being like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, why is the coach frothing at the mouth and they're still losing every week?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's a hard dynamic. But let's get to our schedule real quick, right? So they'll be home for the first 4 games, which is a crazy run. They'll be going against Central Michigan, Richmond, Washington, and Maryland. They'll be away for the next 2 games versus Iowa and Rutgers. They'll be home against Michigan. They'll be away against Minnesota, home versus Nebraska, away versus Ohio State and Indiana, and then back home to finish out versus Penn State. So looking at that, right, what we thinking?
You know what, Jerome? Except for from Michigan on, it's a tough schedule. I mean, we don't know exactly what Nebraska is going to look like this year. Going to assume they're going to be a little bit better than last year.
Yeah.
But from that Michigan game on, Michigan at Minnesota, Nebraska at Ohio State, Indiana is a game. Even though that's away, they probably should win. They're a more physical team than Indiana. But it's also the kind of game if you're beat up going into, maybe it's a tough game for you.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess a record, 4, 5, 6, I would say maybe 6 wins.
I gave them 7 losses, so that brings them about what they had last year.
5 and 7, 6 and 6. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't think around that.
Shame because they don't do again. They have some nice, solid football players.
Yeah,
there's no one exceptional.
Correct.
So in order for them to be that team, they need a Keon Coleman. They need their left tackle, but I hate that name. Oh, it's just Baldwin. My glasses are failing me right now. I'll warm up my upstairs right now. I'm sweating all over myself.
I got you.
Yeah, anyway, they need these younger players, like you said, Malik Carr, their tight end. They need these guys to take steps up and be better players than they were last year.
Correct. That's correct. I agree. Yeah. It's crazy to think they're gonna be 5-7 again. Ray, if they end the season like that, what do you think about Mel Tucker, man? One more season after that, one more hot season, or you think he's pretty safe for now just because of?
I think that Michigan State is the kind of team that doesn't really like to fire coaches.
Yeah.
I think they would stick with him for one more year, but it depends. If they say they lose 8 games, then bets are off. 9 games, bets are off.
Okay.
You know, they lose to at Rutgers, they lose to at Indiana. They will lose either one of them games, and the games you think they would lose.
Yeah,
a tough season for them. And I, as much as I like Mel Tucker, I just don't know how he survives. I think his personality is to be a defensive guy on one side of the ball, and it's hard to be that guy when you're not really calling the offense.
Right.
I don't like. I mean, I like defensive-minded coaches because I like them because they coach physical, tough defenses.
Yeah.
Ryan Flores in Miami. What I don't like about them is their conservative nature that they almost always have.
Yeah.
Just don't turn the ball over, we'll be fine. Our defense will do the job for us. But if you look at their records last year, in the games that they lost, they get outscored by a lot. And the games that they won, they were pretty close games. They got destroyed by Michigan, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
They did beat Wisconsin last year, so that's a good win for them last year.
Interesting.
They got destroyed by Ohio State, not shocking. They lost to Maryland. Can't lose to Maryland if you're Michigan State, man.
Yeah. How they play against Penn State last year?
They didn't play Penn State. Oh, yeah, they did. They lost 35-16. So, I mean, again, they got beat up by Michigan. They got beat up by Penn State. Again, that's not the problem. They lost to Indiana at home. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to, again, and, you know, I live in this area. They actually beat Rutgers, so good for them. They only beat them by 6, though, and Rutgers was not a great team last year. Right. And they lost to Maryland. And even though I respect Maryland, their coach is a good coach, and they play good, hard football, you can't be Michigan State and lose to Maryland.
100%. Yep. Yeah, I agree. So that's gonna be a rough one for these guys. We'll see how that plays out. But let's talk about our last team. It's gonna be Clemson, the Clemson Tigers. Clemson came off a very surprising 11-4, considering how rocky their season actually started. Actually, you know, their starting quarterback did not completely play the rest of the season, being DJ Ukalua. How do you say his name? I'm not going to try it. But he got replaced by my guy, Kate Klubnik, who I'm very high on. And I think he's going to be a very good prospect going out. So let's talk about the Clemson Tigers, Ray. What do you think about their offense?
I like their offense. I love Bo Collins. I like Antonio Williams, a wide receiver. I'm a big Will Shepley kid. Their running back, I think he's a good football player. Their offensive line is what their offensive line is. They're good, solid players. They're always a little undersized, but they're a good, solid team. I mean, Will Putnam's a good football player. Walker Sparks, Blake Miller, Senator Wright, right guard, right tackle. Marcus Tate is their left guard. They do have a sophomore, Chrisman Lai, who will be playing this year. But I think that their offense, with Shipley in there and Klubnik being a little bit more athletic, like an athletic type of a kid who makes quick decisions, I think it's going to help them this year. I think Clemson's due for a bounce back year where, like you said, they had a decent 1-loss record last year, but they didn't play.
They lost 3 games. They lost 3 games last year.
Yeah. So they were 11-3. That sounds like a good record.
Yeah.
But it's Clemson. If you're not a 12-win team and you're in the playoff picture, then you don't feel like you're doing your job.
Oh yeah. It's the same. It's the same deal with like a Alabama. You know, like if they're not almost undefeated every year, or undefeated or one loss kind of a team here, and that's how a lot of people are looking at Clemson. But again, 11-3, they struggled a lot of these games. Don't get me wrong. You know, we seen the game versus who they played last year. That was
The
I know.
game they had a close game against Wake Forest where they only won by 6 in overtime.
Forest, and it was another game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a
Uh,
Syracuse game, 27-21.
there you go.
I mean, like
Yes.
where Syracuse really had them beat most of the game and then lost it at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah, and they lost it when they switched out to Klubnik. So,
Yep.
and
Lost to
they
South Carolina by a point.
the funny game like about that game, and as much as I love Klubnik times in that game.
Mm-hmm.
He came in at halftime, threw 3 times, and they won that game. So, I think this team just kind of need a new identity at the quarterback position to help them out. And sometimes when you got a guy like a DJ, and I still think he can be a solid guy out there, but I just think that sometimes when you come in after a guy like a Trevor Lawrence, you got the whole world on your shoulders. And it doesn't pan out as much as you wanted to. It's hard for the next guy. So, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
of course, we know Dabo Sweeney is a good coach. The guy has a
yeah,
great record. He's
mhm,
won, so he's not the problem. They did change defensive coordinators a couple years ago,
yeah,
but they're still waiting to see for how that's going to, because it wasn't good last year. So I'm thinking they're hoping it's going to be a little bit better this year. They do have some talent on defense.
mhm,
Tyler Davis, Rook Oboro, the
yeah.
defensive lineman. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is a linebacker who's a
He's gonna be
nice
good. I like him a lot.
nice player on this team. Barrett Carter is a linebacker, is a good player.
Yeah,
Sheridan Jones, Nate Wiggins, both good corners. Andrew Hukuba, however you want to say that name. Jalen Phillips are their safeties, both good, solid football players. So
mhm.
there's players on this team, and I don't think they're going to struggle the way they did last year. I don't. I
No,
just
I agree. I agree. So let's talk about their defense, Ray. Lost a lot of pieces this offseason to the NFL draft. How do you think they're gonna fare this year, Ray?
I really think there's plenty of talent on this defense still.
I
There's
do too.
guys that have played a decent amount of good high profile football. I
Mhm.
think they're going to be good. Again, I don't think Dabo Sweeney's going to get caught with his pants down the way he did last year with defense. I think he's going to. I think he's going to learn. I need to balance my offense and stop throwing the ball quite so much. Use Will Shipley. Last year there were times when they kind of forgot about him,
Yeah.
and that's a mistake.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. I agree. Some guys I want to point out: Demonte Cuphart. I think he's going to be a good, solid guy to help them out in the long run. They got a lot of good freshmen from Georgia that I know over the last couple of years that I think they're going to be good and even in the future. But a guy that you talked about, Jeremiah Trotter, being at linebacker, he's very fast. I think he's going to be a good guy. Um, Believe it or not, I heard that they're gonna probably play a lot of Avion Terrell. He's the little brother of AJ Terrell, and I actually just got to talk to him. He told me that Sweeney has plans for him to play very early in their defense, so that's gonna be very interesting to see. Very talented guy out here in Georgia, came from Westlake, so I think he's gonna be a solid guy. But there's one guy that I've been talking about all offseason with my guys that I talk with football that I think is gonna have a breakout year and everybody's gonna be shocked about him, and it is RJ Mickens. I think RJ Mickens is gonna be he's break my breakout player of the year. Mark my words on that. I think he's gonna and it's funny because I'm not the only one saying this. I think there's a lot of people that thinks that RJ Mickens have very good NFL qualities to him, and a lot of people think that he's going to be a really good player for them this year. He's going to be a breakout guy that a lot of people don't know right now, and probably going to know by the end of the season. So, I hate to say stuff like that because I hate to jinx guys, but I really feel really high on RJ Mickens as a safety this year. So we'll definitely see how he does. I'm going to keep an eye on him, but I'm really high on him. What do you think about him, Ray?
I mean, I think he's a really nice player, but again, they get Makubu and Phillips at safety right now. It just kind of just shows you how deep they are on defense.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think that honestly, if you know what if Clemson got better offensive linemen, as good as they've been, they would even be better. Because even when they had Trevor Lawrence hit a lot of deficiency on their offensive line. That's what people don't realize about it. Everybody knows Trevor Lawrence was good. We do. Right. We all know he was good. People don't. I don't think people really know how good he was.
Yeah, because
my man did a lot for a team that really didn't have a strong offensive line.
Yeah. And Ray, that's the funny thing because like we're talking about, DJ starting and stuff like that, but that was the one thing we talked about, that offensive line. Even though DJ's a very talented guy, but it was like the offensive line. I don't know, and we was hoping that DJ uses his legs a little bit more and was able to break that a little bit. But
the problem with that is, Jerome, again, you don't have a great offensive line, so you can't just feed the ball to your running backs. And and we know as much as talented as DJ was, and he's a talented kid, I think he watched Trevor Lawrence play too long and thought he could be Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
You're not, man.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, and I know the NFL, I know everybody, I know some people are down on Trevor Lawrence. Just watch, man. Just watch. Okay?
Yeah. No, I agree.
I don't like his hair either, man. Just watch him play, okay?
Yeah. Let's do it. All right, Ray, let's talk about the schedule this year. So they're going to start the year at Duke. They're going to be home for the next 3 games versus Charleston Southern. I think that's what that is, Charleston Southern. FAU, Florida State. They're going to be at Syracuse. They're going to be home versus Wake Forest. They're going to be at Miami, at North Carolina State. And then home for the next 3 games versus Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina. And then they'll be away for the last game versus South Carolina. So with their schedule, Ray, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking 12 wins. Maybe 13.
I'm thinking it might be 13 too, Ray. There's only one game that I think it can, like, even the one game that I think they could lose is like, honestly, that's Notre Dame. I think y'all giving the toughest.
I agree. Play. I think, and I'm not saying we will beat them. I'm saying we could. Just like I think the game against Miami, we're not sure exactly what Miami's going to look like. It's at Miami. It could be a close game. Plus, they beat Miami pretty handily last year. I know this. Syracuse, Wake Forest, NC State are not going to sneak up on Clemson this year. They're going to get manhandled in those games. Clemson's not going to play a game. They're not. That was when you're like, no, man, we played really bad against these teams last year. We're not doing it again.
I agree.
I think honestly, you're going to see they're going to win their first 7 games, I think, fairly easily, to be honest with you. And then Miami game, that's what I mean. They could start out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0, and then I'm not saying they'll probably beat Miami, but that could be a close game because they just feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing that could happen to Notre Dame and North Carolina and Georgia Tech is they lose that Miami game. If they lose that Miami game, and then North Carolina, they'll take it out of NC State. I mean, the funny thing is that Notre Dame's best win last year was against Clemson.
It was.
Man, Clemson last year, man. That was my favorite game in like 5 years, man. And we threw the ball like 8 times in the whole game.
Y'all ran
We manhandled them last year, dude.
all over them.
And Clemson had a good defensive front still.
They did.
But they like to one gap everybody. And Notre Dame said, God, we're just going to push you one side and cut right around you. And then once we got into the secondary, we gashed them, man. We ran for like 300 yards against them last year. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was insane. That rushing
my favorite game in years, man. Because it was a big game for us because we had played pretty badly up until then. Yeah,
exactly. Y'all was.
I mean, we were like winning games, but we were not winning games looking good.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course we lost the whole game to Marshall, which kind of like put a glitch in the whole season. And then we played like crap against Stanford. And then we manhandled Clemson.
It was the most hide and Jekyll season I've ever seen.
We were definitely not consistent, without a doubt. So
yeah, for sure. But I'll say this about Clemson, man. I think they're gonna have a bounce back year, if you want to call that a bounce back year, because they only lost 3 games last year. Like you said, they struggled against some games and some teams last year, but I mean, just looking at it, the quality of the team itself, you know, Klubnik having his first full season as a starter with some some games under his belt as a freshman last year, you know, the team's gonna be really around him. You still got Will Shipley. You still got very talented players on that defense. I see
Antonio Williams. This is a good team, man.
Yeah, and the futuristic players, man. They got some dogs going in, being a freshman now, and you know I'm very curious and excited to see how this team goes, man. So Clemson might be one of those teams that we might be seeing in the playoffs next year.
I think that if Dabo Swinney doesn't leave, if he's not in that position at the end of the year to at least try to get in, he's gonna be very disappointed. And I don't think it's gonna happen. I expect him to bounce back and have a good year. I do. I mean, I don't like it because we played him again this year. Yeah, but I do expect him to bounce back. And again, they may only win 11 or 12 games still, but it won't be where they're just hanging on and beating teams at the end. They're gonna play really well against these teams that they struggled with last year, I believe. So,
no, I agree. So, hey, if you're a Clemson fan, you should be very excited about this year, for sure. So, all right, guys, that's gonna do it for us for all our team talk. But I do want to have one quick topic before we actually get off, Ray, because we did not mention this at all. But just recently, Pat Fitzgerald gets fired from Northwestern over a hazing scandal. So Ray, do you want to kind of touch on this situation and what you think about the whole thing in general?
Well, I think that hazing has been going on in football for a very long time. I think most people have always known it. Most coaches kind of look the other way. Yeah. They think that – I don't want to make this sound like I don't think it's a problem because it's always been a problem. I mean, we had a kid die at Penn State a few years ago because of the same type of situation where they just kept feeding him beer and he hadn't been a drinker up until that time. Yeah. And then fell down the steps and passed away. And so hazing's always been an issue. I just don't understand, like, well, for one, you know, I like Pat Fitzgerald. I think he's a good coach. Yeah. I think he's been he's been there for 17 seasons. He's always done a good job. They didn't have a great year last year. They were okay. I think that's part of it. I honestly think that they should have waited until everything came out before they made a move like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because now the season's like a month and a half away. And I know people that who cares about the season. No, again, you're not talking about someone being seriously injured or anything like that. You're talking about a couple guys complaining about something they didn't feel was right. You know what, man? This is what the portal should be for, though. You don't feel comfortable because of something that happened? If you went to the coach, and because if I were a coach at a major university, get me wrong, I would have my set of rules. But I also would expect the veteran players in the locker room to kind of police themselves and let me know what's going on. Now, the fact that no one did that tells me think there's normal like procedure for them. So whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Should Coach be the only one that takes the downfall for it though?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I want to point this out. 3 major factors that they revealed during this investigation. So first and foremost, it said that it was 11 current players or former players that acknowledged the systematic ongoing hazing within the program. This part is very disturbing that I read. It said that the hazing included forceful participation, nudity, and sexual acts of degrading nature. And then the last part, it says the hazing. This is the part that I'm kind of weird about because he did get fired, but it said the hazing was well known by many in the program, though it was not determined. Rather, Fitzgerald was aware of it. So,
right. Okay, well, let me put it this way.
It's interesting because I mean, if he was, and it, like they found out he was aware of it, then in that sense, I think he should have got fired because you can't sexually harass people in the sense of probably making them go be naked or doing sexual degrading stuff to them. That's always bad. That's always bad, no matter who it is or how it is, football, whatever. I think that's always bad. If he get fired and he wasn't sure if he was aware of it, one, I think that if he wasn't aware of it, I don't think I don't know if you can fire him. The offense is, it makes sense. I don't know if you could fire him if he wasn't.
How long ago, Drum? Since I had not seen, maybe I should have looked at the report that you're looking at. I have not looked at it. How long? It's been going on for a few years. They said.
Yeah. It said.
It involves 11 players.
Involved 11 players
On their roster this year.
Say again.
On their roster this year, or from
it said some of them was current. It was a mixture of.
See how many on the current roster, or no?
Say Eric.
Did it tell you how many are on the current roster, or no?
So it said 11, but it says either current or former. So it don't say how many of either one. But it was 11 players that.
The only way I would find Fitzgerald responsible for me is if one of these players went and told him and he did nothing about it.
Correct.
If that didn't happen, he shouldn't have been fired.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only thing. I don't want the whole Penn State thing. The only thing that bothers me about it is Paterno knew something about it and didn't really do anything about it.
Correct. Yeah. And the thing about it is it was only 11 players. You got about 100-something players on the team. You get what I'm saying?
So you're talking about like 100 players, say 3 or 4 years. So you're talking about like 200-300 players now, and only 11. Wow.
Yeah. And then out of those 11, some of them are former players, not even current
right.
players.
That's what I mean. So it's a couple of years. So you're talking about like a couple of hundred players now. Yeah. Why only 11? What is the?
That's a weird number.
Yes, it is. And again, I'm not trying to, man. No one ever put their hands on anyone else.
Correct.
Unless it's football related. Period. Correct. Doesn't matter, and I say that because it's football. It doesn't matter if you're out. Like there was 2 girls that almost abducted recently, right around in the Philadelphia area. Now they caught the 2 guys that tried to do it. But I mean, you should never physically put your hands on anyone else. Period, unless you're asked to.
Correct.
Period. I mean, I don't care what the situation is. I don't care what your intentions are. You should never put your hands on anyone else. Period. And that's all there is. I mean, but again, 11 players. If one of them guys came back and told Pat Narducci and he knew about any of it and did nothing about it, then yes, he deserves to be fired. Now, we don't know if that happened. Maybe it did happen. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe they went to the athletic director, the coaching staff, and the players told him, yeah, we told the coach about this last year or 2 years ago or 3 years. Then, yes, he deserves to be fired because he did nothing about it. I mean, hazing is – you make a guy spin around and, what I mean, like go find something stupid, like incidental, like something that isn't, that's illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about sexual assault. You're not talking about hazing anymore. That's the point.
Yeah.
So if Pat Fitzgerald had knew nothing about those incidents, then really honestly, then he shouldn't have been fired.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. I guess I'll find out eventually exactly what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mean, I know this. Pat Fitzgerald is a very good football coach, and he won't have a hard time finding a job. But he will have to clear his name a little bit first.
100%. Yeah, he might have to take a season off or something like that.
Maybe take a coordinator
it's
job
late in the season anyway, so he probably would anyway. Just have this.
Let's face it, he gets his players to play hard, man.
Yeah,
and he's a great defensive mind, and he's a very good coach, and he was a very good college player. So he has all the credentials to make his way through this. Again, I honestly hope that I would not be surprised if part of this is the fact that they've struggled the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That may be a part of it. Again, I'm going to say this is pretty much for me the bottom line. If he knew about it, if anyone came to him and told him what was going on and he did nothing about it, yes. Fire him, yes, without doubt. Because again, nobody should ever put their hands on anyone. The only way I would ever put is if you come after me. If you put your hands on me, I have no choice but to defend myself. But as mad as I get, I would never, ever put my hands on another human being unless they did it to me first.
Yep.
I mean, I had an incident when I was a kid with a Boy Scout, like a scout leader, and I pretty much told him if he ever put his hands on my cousin again, I was going to break his arm.
Mm-hmm.
I meant it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a long time ago, and I never had coaches that did things like that. We had coaches that pushed us, and we had some hazing. Our hazing was really, honestly, you had to stand in the middle of the football field, spin around a few times with a blindfold on, and then find your way to the end zone. That was your hazing. That was your initiation into the team. That was harmless, though.
Yeah.
That was not anybody ever putting their hands on me.
Correct. So.
And that's where, I mean, like, I don't understand where that comes from. But again, I don't want to get into what guys think and what their sexual preferences may have to do with this. But I'm not going to do that. So.
Yeah. Any way you try to sex shame somebody in any kind of way, that's just bad. So
you don't put your hands on.
I hope the people that was like initially involved though was punished. I haven't seen anything looking through this. I know they was talking just this article, at least this article right here. I only seen things about like the coach himself, and I would love to investigate a little bit more just out of curiosity. But I hope the people that was directly involved in this were punished as well and punished hard. So
honestly, they should be expelled and thrown out of college football.
100%.
But I mean, again, people will say, "Oh no, you can't do that." Why? It's your league. Run it like it's your league.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's gonna do it for us today, guys. I thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We're gonna have a lot more teams that we're gonna be talking about leading up to the season. Obviously, we're gonna be talking about me and Ray's favorite teams, Michigan and Notre Dame, very soon. Getting a little bit closer to the season, so we'll definitely be talking about them. So definitely make sure you stay locked in because there's a lot of good teams that we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about Alabama yet. We haven't talked about Ohio State yet. You haven't talked about Michigan, Notre Dame. There's a lot of good teams that we have not talked about yet. So
USC.
stay locked in. Yeah,
we did do Southern Cal.
Yeah, we did. USC last week.
We did. We did.
Definitely. So definitely stay locked in with us, man. We're going to be talking about a lot of these good teams very, very soon. So if you like to hear what we think about how the preseason is, definitely stay locked in with us. Go ahead, Ray.
Ruin's homesake, Georgia Bulldogs.
There you go. Dang, I didn't even say the national champions. So we did not even talk about them. So definitely stay locked in with us. We're going to be talking about them very, very soon. So this is the RPO podcast.
It almost sounds funny hearing that. Georgia Bulldogs national champions. It really does.
It does.
Even after 2 years after they won 2 in a row, it still sounds like a year.
It does. But listen, you're not down here in Georgia and listening to all the Georgia fans every single day. So I'm reminded every day literally every
Oh, I bet
single
you are. It must
day.
be fun.
Every
It must be delightful.
And the thing is, I never hated Georgia. I actually kind of rooted for them because I loved how good of a running back class they always produce. Like
And you hate
most of my favorite running backs are from Georgia. So it's like, they kind of ruining the Georgia experience for me right now because they're being very obnoxious. But hey, I guess you went 2 in a row. I guess you got.
Yeah, man. If Notre Dame and Michigan were winning the way they are, we'd be obnoxious too. It's okay.
Yeah. It's part true.
It'd be
But
okay.
that's gonna do it for us today, guys. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube and hit that notification, that QR code right under right over here, right there, and find our social medias. We are on every social media, so make sure you go in there, give us some support. Let us know how you feel about this episode. Leave a comment if you wasn't able to get on here live. That's okay. Go on a replay. Go watch this and some of our older videos as well, and put a comment in there. We comment back on every comment on YouTube. So definitely do that. And guys, we appreciate everything, man. Can't wait for the seasons coming up very, very fast. It'll be here before we even know it. And I'm very much looking forward to it, man, because I hate this dead period. I really do hate this dead period. So I'm Jerome Jones. That's Ray Roberts. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate y'all, and see you on the next one. Peace.